Imagine a nation with a population of over 100 million people being left with only one child. This isn't a scene from a Hollywood movie, it could become a reality in Japan, according to projections made by a professor at Tohoku University. Japan, once a symbol of economic power and cultural influence, is now facing a population crisis so severe that its very future is at stake. A close look at Japan's demographics will shed light on the crisis. Birth rates have plummeted and entire communities are vanishing. In 2025, only about 700,000 babies were born across Japan, and the lowest figure since the records began in 1968. But in the same year, more than 1.5 million deaths were recorded. That means the population declined by close to 1 million in 2024. But Japan's population crisis did not start in 2024. Actually, the crisis began in 2009. That year, Japan reached the peak of its population, approximately 127.5 million. And for 16 years, the East Asian country has seen a continuous decline in its population, dropping to approximately 124.3 million. However, the demographic crisis is not unique for Japan. In almost half of countries worldwide, birth rates have fallen below 2.1 births per woman, the replacement level needed to maintain a stable population size. The West is headed that way too. The US birth rate has reached a record low of fewer than 1.6 births per woman in 2024, down from around 3.5 in early 1960s. Numbers are also dropping fast in Europe. Germany's fertility level dropped to 1.35 births per woman. France reported 1.62 births per woman, the lowest since the end of World War I. Finland's fertility rate dropped to 1.25 according to official statistics. But Japan's demographic crisis is unique in its way, in that it's compounded by a significant rise in its aging population. As of September 2025, the number of people in Japan aged 100 or older hit a record high of nearly 100,000, according to Japanese Health Ministry. Also, approximately 1 in 10 Japanese are now aged 80 years or older. The severity of the crisis is demonstrated by a strange trend in its villages, many of which are on the brink of extinction. In the village of Nagoro, local residents began creating life-size dolls of Kakashi to replace the villagers who have either moved away or died. Another village went 25 years without newborns. In 2018, Kawakami village welcomed the first newborn in its district since 1991. Think about that. It's not something from a fiction movie, it's a reality. And during the 25-year period, the village posted a significant population decline, with younger residents departing while the remaining population consisted mainly of seniors. And the two villages are not outliers. Lots of other rural areas are suffering from severe population decline. But the problem isn't confined in villages, it is visible in major cities too. For many young Japanese, having kids is just off the table. And if the current trajectory continues, the population is projected to drop to 87 million by 2070. Seniors aged 65 or older are expected to increase to 40%, down from the current 30%. Of course, old age makes natural childbirth highly unlikely, and thus the high proportion of aging population further aggravates the crisis. So, why is Japan experiencing the most severe population crisis on Earth? And what are the effects of the crisis? And what is Japan doing to address the crisis? This video will cover the answers to these questions in details. So, why is Japan experiencing the most severe population crisis on Earth? Well, Japan's population crisis is largely caused by the declining marriage rate in the country. Many young people delay or completely reject marriage, and this is a major shift from the decades following World War II, which saw the highest ever annual number of weddings, mainly because of the traditional system of arranged marriages. The system led to stable families. This meant childbirth was not a concern at all. But arranged marriages faded and were replaced by love marriages. As a result, the marriage rate dropped. In 2023, the number of marriages in the country hit a record low of 9 decades, falling 5.9% to only 480,000 couples. To add to the issue, the younger generations are redefining the relationship by focusing on personal freedom and economic stability. Have you heard of solo weddings where women choose to marry themselves? In Japan, this is not unusual. It's a common thing. Another key reason is Japan's intense work culture, which is notoriously demanding, with employees expected to demonstrate punctuality, dedication, and diligence in their roles. Despite laws requiring 40 hours of work per week, many employees are pressured to stay at the office late, sometimes without pay, as a sign of dedication. Also, the practice of not leaving before one boss is common. Of course, with such a demanding work culture, it will be difficult for anyone to find the proper work-life balance. This forces many to abandon the need of parenthood. Economic challenges in the country, including slow economic growth, stagnant wage rates, and high cost of living, also contributes to the crisis. On average, a family of 4 could spend roughly $4,300, and the cost of living is even higher in major cities like Tokyo due to higher cost for transportation, rent, and overall living expenses, and not to mention childcare costs, which are very high in cities. Yet, wages in Japan have largely stagnated in the past 2 decades. The significant financial burden discourages young couples from starting a family or having kids. If you add up these issues, the consequences are more severe. About 52% of young people don't have kids and don't want them, and majority of young men and women can't find a suitable spouse. Perhaps you are asking, what about having children out of marriage? Well, this is not an option for many Japanese due to Japan's strong tradition and potential stigma. With all these factors, population decline is inevitable. So, what are the effects of the population crisis? The shrinking population is problematic for Japan from an economic and social perspective. Population decline has led to a shrinking workforce. Of course, a country needs newborns to maintain and replenish its workforce over the long term, as the new generation grows to become the next wave of taxpayers, innovators, and workers. A recent survey shows 2/3 of Japanese companies are facing severe workforce shortage, and fewer workers means a smaller tax base to fund social services and a reduced consumer market, leading to slow economic growth, and the higher dependency ratio threatens economic stability. Additionally, with the higher proportion of elderly people, Japan faces a significant increase in social security expenditure, placing a significant burden on public expenditure. Of course, older individuals require more expensive health and long-term care services. This means increased Japan's healthcare spending. In fact, more than 30% of Japan's national budget for 2024 was allocated to social security, way above $52.1 billion for the national defense. The trends erode the country's potential for growth and have made it harder for Japan to maintain its global economic competitiveness. In the global competitive ranking, Japan has fallen from first position in 1992 to 37th place in 2024. Also, Japan has lagged in adopting digital technologies, leading to a digital gap and weakening its innovation capability. Many rural areas in Japan are on the decline as younger people continue to migrate to major cities in search of higher wages, better entertainment, and more abundant career opportunities. This has led in millions of abandoned homes, also known as Akia, across the countryside. Some villages have become ghost villages. Critical services, which are a source of government revenue, shrinks as the population declines. Schools are closing due to a lack of children, public transport, while local businesses shut down. Social isolation has worsened, contributing to a rise in kadokoshi or lonely deaths among elderly people who live alone and pass away unnoticed. And the effects of the crisis are becoming more apparent as the population decline escalates. So, what is being done to address the crisis? The government of Japan has acknowledged and expressed deep concern over the country's ongoing population crisis. Former Prime Minister Fumio Kishida termed the declining birth rate, quote, the gravest crisis our country faces, end quote. He warned that Japan is at a now or never moment to address the population decline. Both national and local government have implemented incentives to attract residents, including offering financial rewards to people who move to rural areas or have children. For instance, in 2023, the government began offering families close to $8,000 per child to move out of Tokyo to less populated regions. Also, the government is increasingly turning to foreigners to fill gaps in its labor force. Over the years, Japan's restrictive immigration policies have exacerbated the demographic crisis by limiting the influx of workers and families needed to offset declining birth rates and shrinking workforce. In 2024, foreigners accounted for just 3.2% of Japan's total population, compared to 14% in the United States. Japan is attempting to increase immigration by creating pathways for foreign workers, especially in sectors with labor shortages, and improving the integration of foreign nationals into society. Key measures include expanding the Specified Skilled Worker Visa program to include more industries and less skilled labor, making it easier for international graduates to obtain residency. The country has also reformed its visa categories. However, the implementation of Japan's immigration policies, especially those for foreign workers, has been far from smooth. Protests from far-right and nationalist groups have been on the rise, often driven by the Japanese first rhetoric. In a notable incident, angry protest fueled by social media misinformation about the alleged flood of African immigrants led to the cancellation of a government-led exchange program between Japanese municipalities and African nations. Some Japanese expressed concerns about public safety, strain on resources, and fear of immigrants overstaying their visas. Others felt that the government is prioritizing on foreigners over citizens. Some comments were clearly xenophobic, propagating negative stereotypes about African nations and its people. The central government eventually had to step in to dispel rumors, clarifying that the interns were temporary and would return to their home countries afterward. And the recent anti-immigrant protests demonstrate the deep complexity of addressing Japan's restrictive immigration policy and its escalating population crisis. Amidst the continuing debates and protests, the question that remains is, how can Japan effectively address the population crisis without causing an uproar or social unrest among its citizens? Of course, what Japan is experiencing offers critical warnings and lessons to developed nations facing declining birth rates and rising aging populations. Countries nearing or below replacement level fertility must implement comprehensive structural reforms before demographic shift becomes irreversible and the dependency ratio burdens the global economy. That's all from me today. Please like and subscribe for more videos like this one.